Aloha, it is member-supported Hawaii Public Radio, and all things considered, I'm Dave Lawrence, and thank you for listening. This is a real treat. We have a whole bunch of cats who are blazing down at the Blue Note Hawaii, which is in Waikiki, and they're doing 2 shows a night all the way through Sunday. It's the Pedrito Martinez Group, and we've got the whole band here, and Pedrito leading the clapping here, and very cool to have him, percussionist, a legendary cat, and also in the band with us today. Man, I can't read your writing as well, but Javier Sala.
Yeah.
Javier Sala.
Jair Sala.
Jair Sala. Who has been just slamming on the percussion, and welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
You're quite welcome. Edgar Pantoya on the keyboards, and thank you for being here.
And thank you for having us.
You're quite welcome. And sitting next to Alvaro Benavides,
Bass player.
and he was smoking tonight too. And these cats have latest record, still the one with that was produced by Steve Gadd.
That was the previous one. We did a new one in Cuba like more than 2 months ago.
So brand new.
Yeah, it's a brand new. It's gonna be out in June.
Okay, so still not out, coming out. So the one that with Steve is the most recent that people can get.
Yes.
And then a new one in Cuba, and that's exciting to hear about too. And you cats are, I was talking to a little bit with Alvaro when you were eating, sort of interrupting, we were bonding on Boston. You guys are based in New York, is that what I was listening to?
We're based in New York, yes. And we have been for the best of 2 decades, maybe.
Okay. And you cats are, when it came to this recording that you just mentioned, everybody here participated in the recording down in Cuba? Went down there?
We all went down to Cuba.
All went down there together. And this is, you had the opportunity. Cuba, for a lot of people now, it's a huge item in the news because for a lot of Americans, it's a place that we have not been able to go to, and suddenly you're hearing about not only what's changing for the Cuban people, but how it changes with the relationship with the United States. When it relates to cats like yourself having left Cuba, how did it work? Because some of those countries, you get the impression that it's a little bit difficult to leave from communist countries. Was it difficult for you? Explain how you were able to emigrate and do the things that you did when you did.
Well, it was tough when I used to live down there, and it was hard to get out of the country also. But I got lucky that Jen Bonet, great saxophone player from Toronto, went down to Cuba. She put together a group with a piano player named called Hilario Duran, and then a couple more friends, and I was part of that group. So she brought that group to Canada, and then for a tour. And then we did a couple of shows at the Knitting Factory in New York. So after I finished the contract with her, I stayed in the United States. But before that, I was in Cuba, trying to survive.
And you stay in the U.S. legally, as you were like a legal, you emigrated from there?
Yeah, it was legally. Actually, for Cubans, it was perfect because, the rules for Cuba is that after 1 year and 1 day, we are allowed to get our green card.
Okay, so U.S. had expanded rules, right? That's what sort of they're talking about now with all these migrants who are desperately trying to get here now before those special privileges change.
It's pretty interesting because all the way until this new opening that has happened, Cubans had a lot of trouble getting out of Cuba. Like that was the whole deal was how are we going to get out of here? And once they got out, all they had to do was make sure that they could put a foot in the United States. Like, this is the law. The law says if they can put 1 foot on American soil, they can stay for 366 days. And after their 366th day, they get the green card, right? So it's very hard for them to leave the country, but it's very easy to get into the United States. Whereas the rest of the Latin people, leaving our country was just buying an airplane ticket and leaving. But getting into the United States is a hard task. Getting papers to be in the United States is a hard task. I mean, I guess there's a balance there. What they got back at home was so tough that I guess getting a chance to just come into the States was fair. But it's very interesting how hard it is for them to get out and how easy it is for them to get in to the States, whereas the rest of us had to struggle and go through a lot of different ways in order to get legal papers to come here.
Was it exciting to go there and get to record? I mean, is it must be a kind of a special feeling to embark on a journey like that, both because you're working with a friend, but you're going to a special place to do something.
Yeah. Well, at first I had no idea it was going to be like it was. Like, I knew it was going to be interesting. I'm from a Latin country as well, so there's certain similarities that I knew that certain familiarities that I was gonna encounter. But it's kind of like parenting. You don't really know what it is until you have kids. You know, like, well, you don't really know what Cuba is until you go there. You know, and it was an amazing experience. And I think I speak for the four of us when I say that it was a great experience to record in the studio where we recorded, because it's a legendary studio. But for me, what was most amazing was to be there, to witness what the life of these people are like. And I came back with a great lesson, which is human beings will endure anything, man. I mean, human beings are tough creatures. We're also terrible in many ways, but we're tough creatures. What the people of Cuba have endured for over half a century is something that I don't know how they're survived. I don't know how they're still alive, you know, like, it's incredible.
Yeah, it is nuts. Edgar, any thoughts about your impressions? I presume this is something.
He's from Cuba.
Yeah, and so where do you call home? You're in New York these days, and then this is a visit back?
Living in New Jersey.
So you're living now in America full time, and you started living in the U.S. when? What year?
2008.
Wow, so much more recently.
But he lived for 10 years in Spain before he came. So he left 18 years.
1998.
Yeah, they left the same year, but he came to New York. He went
Like
to
a buffer zone with Spain.
I went to Spain, to Barcelona.
So talk about, like, when you go back there, for you, when you see this, because for some Cuban people, there's different nuance to this whole integration with the United States. There's elements of it which they don't like, and sometimes people think that government should just be overthrown, that not be dealt with in Cuba. You know, like, there are hardliners in the United States who are thinking, or hardliners in the American Cuban community who think that, you know, there are differing views. Kind of like when Elian Gonzalez, when that happened, you saw there were two different views and multiple views on how to deal with the Cuban government. Because some people, as you described them, they're so mad at them for the way that they treat people, they don't want any kind of negotiation. And then on the other hand, there's people who realize that to get some sort of progress, you do sort of have to talk to people. So when you think about what's happening with Cuba and your recent visit there, is this a good thing? Is this like an entering of a lighter time when you see the changes that are happening with the U.S. in particular?
I think little by little, Cuba, the law will be better for the Cuban people. I think that now, for example, Obama is coming to Cuba, and I think that this is a good thing to open the relationship between both countries, you know. The embassy, for example, was almost 1 year. And I think little by little, Cuban people will improve their life little by little.
A lot has to do with the relationship they'll have with this country. I think also time needs to, it needs to be given time, because this is
wine. It has to develop. It's not going to just be perfect, right?
Happen overnight. And these people have been listening for 50 years that the United States are the enemy and they're the bad guys. So,
Exactly.
so they have internalized certain concepts in their head where, like unconsciously they have some sort of rejection towards the United States. So the opening will allow a lot of people to actually create an opinion of themselves. Like, they will look at it and say, well, some of them will be like, yeah, this is bad. And some of them will be like, this ain't that. I mean, this isn't the bad thing that they told me it was, and I think time will do it.
What's interesting is that so many people, when people come to me for an interview and start talking, what do you think about the situation now with Cuba and United States? People always been relating Cuba and United States with political problems. Not all of us get out of the country because of political problems. You know what I'm saying?
Right, you're a musical ambassador.
I don't know nothing about politics.
Right.
The reason I get out of Cuba because I want a better future. I want better opportunities, and I would like to, and I really want to open, my mind to the world and start learning all the cultures, because in Cuba you cannot do that. So
better your life.
yeah, the only reason the reason I came out of Cuba, it was because that, not because the political situation, because I don't know nothing about politics. You know?
And it's really a lot of, on that musical note, that's so funny you say that, because now there's also some musical history that's about to happen there. It's very different than jazz. The Rolling Stones going to Cuba. I mean, how incredible.
But, you know, even that, Cuban have big influence of American music. Big one.
Yeah, but for a band like that to go to play to Cuba, that's a big thing, man.
It's a huge thing. Yeah. But, you know, we've been expecting that for years and years, because when I was little, I used to listen to Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, so many rock bands.
In Havana, you were listening to Zeppelin.
Listening to the radio, like, very...
At some point, there was this whole thing of contraband, of musical contraband in Cuba. Like, musicians that were able to go out on tours, then they would buy, you know, LPs and bring them back to Cuba. And then, I guess, you know, this is what I think, but I think I've also heard these stories. Like, let's say he goes out and he buys this up. There's a line of musicians that are going to be like, I want a copy of that. Right, yeah, like, right. You know, like, I want to let me have it, you know, like,
so it proliferates.
Exactly. And then, so because American music is the devil's music and it's, you know, forbidden, but underground, it's happening all over, you know what I mean?
Kind of like behind the Iron Curtain in Europe is a very...
Listen to American music in Cuba. It was illegal.
Right.
To listen to American music.
To listen to Beatles, for example.
That's unbelievable, huh?
American music, so people have the radio in a very low volume.
Yeah, because you don't want your neighbor to know.
I just call to say I love... No, that's good. That's a Stevie Wonder.
That is like a secret, right? It's amazing. Well, I mean, and that does show the bridge between, it's almost like, even if you're not into politics, you almost like, sort of like what you were saying, you can't escape the impact it's having on people's lives there with that kind of stranglehold. That, I mean, it's really unprecedented when you describe it like that. That's almost like people having to pray quietly because their religion has been, is forbidden.
Opinion, I think that the Cuban music is rich as it is. Big part of that is because the political situation that we have. That's why the Afro-Cuban music, the popular music in Cuba is so powerful, because we've been against, you know, all this political problem. The only way to, you know, to put out all our frustration was in the music.
It's kind of like, in some ways, how reggae is, because, you know, I've noticed living here, reggae is very big here. And reggae is a sort of worldwide kind of spirit of islands. So when you describe that, in a lot of island situations, people have been oppressed. So there are these kind of pushbacks that come in the music. Is that sort of like what I'm hearing?
Yeah, definitely.
In what you're describing.
Also, when they forbid anything that's coming from America or Anglo, you know, coming from an Anglo world, then you still want to hear a lot of music, and you still want to have music in your life. So, okay, we can't have this one, well, but we have ours, so let's work on ours, you know, and let's come up with our new thing. And also, because, like, in Venezuela, where I'm from, or Peru, where Jay is from, we didn't have this close thing, so we had a lot of influence from America culturally. So we got all the rock and roll, we got all the American music, hip-hop. So we understood how it was. For them, it's different because they're getting it, like, barely. So what they're doing is they're internalizing as much as they can, which is not as much as the rest of us, and then they're bringing out something out of that. And they come up with something that the rest of the world is like, what are these guys doing, man? I mean, what is this? You know, this is wild. This is really wild. I didn't know that music could go that way, you know?
Yeah, it has a freshness because of that, is what you're saying. Yeah. There's a kickback.
At a price.
Right, at a horrible price. At a horrible price. We have not included you enough, and before we wrap it up, Peru is such a fascinating place, and when your own musical roots, what was it that drew you to music? I watched you tonight on the congas, just laying at them. It's just after this cat, and then he steps back, you're like, I wonder what... and you just unload. It's kind of like a military assault, you know, out there. What drew you to music and made you so passionate about it to begin with?
What made me passionate about music?
Yeah, like when you were a kid, like what was it? Because you didn't just become this like badass conga player. Clearly, that was a development of passion. Oh, yeah, he just started his new course.
I come from a musical family, so I've been into music since before I was born. Actually, my mom is a singer. My father is a composer and a musician as well. Folk music from Peru, Afro-Peruvian music.
And what does your dad play? What instrument?
He played guitar, cajon, the box that he's sitting.
I know the cajon, and I saw him hitting it on for the sounds. And
Cajon, and then my mom is a singer and a dancer, so that's what comes from, man.
And what's your mom's name?
Mariela Valencia.
And dad.
Carlos Sala.
It's just nice hearing that when you say it. It has a nice sound.
What's funny about him? We're all like Pedro, Edgar, and I. We're in a certain age level, which, well, it's the 40s. Whereas Jair is 26 now. Interesting.
27, man.
Okay, 27. I still feel like he's 18, but it's funny because him being almost 20 years younger than the rest of us, we all have about the same length of musical career.
Wow.
Because he started when he was like 5 years old, something like that.
Because of that background.
Because his mother was a very popular singer in Peru when he was a little kid, and then he would be taken on tours and he would be taught to play the percussion. So in the shows, they would suddenly bring out this little kid who danced and played the cajon, and stuff. And
That's kind of a novelty.
I was surrounded by older people, and you get to learn a lot about music and about life walking around older people.
What is an early memory of your parents sort of parading you out and your role in their performance?
Wow, I remember once I peed on myself in the middle of a performance in the main theater of Lima, Teatro Municipal. I just peed myself. I was just nervous. I was playing. I was keep playing though. I was playing, but I was just.
You were on the congas?
Yeah. Then I was playing cajon, and then and then you hear everybody. Oh, like everyone's like, oh my, to cry, to feel sorry.
That's a good thing about starting your career when you're an adult, That doesn't happen to you.
You miss some of those moments, but they're very endearing. They're great stories. It's the Pedrito Martinez Group. They've got 2 shows a night through Sunday at the Blue Note here in Hawaii. And how's this Blue Note? Final question. That you've been to a lot of venues, no doubt. I see Carnegie Hall. So I mean, some of these venues are just some world class stuff. How's this place?
So far, this Blue Note is the best one.
Well, I mean, I don't know the Japan Blue Note, the Tokyo Blue Note. Okay.
You've been in that?
Yeah, many times.
But I know the New York City Blue Note very well, and there is a big difference between that one and this one. I mean, that one's the legend, but this one's the quality right now.
Yeah.
We're very lucky because it's so much musical. It's just a confluence of great kinds of artists that have been coming. So it's really, after living in this neighborhood, is not like Boston that we shared, where you had 2, 3, 4 shows a night all over the place. You had to figure out what you were going to see and not see. So it's great to have you all here. Good luck on the rest of your trip, and thank you for being here on HPR with me.
Pleasure, man. Thanks for having us here.
You're quite welcome, and thank you, my brother.
Thank you for having us, man.
Good seeing you, Edgar.
Thank you for having us.
And you too, brother.
Thanks so much, man.
Thank you too. Thank you.
Thank you. It's fun.